Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of self-referential music, songs that reference the fact that they are songs or music, whether that's in the title or the lyrics. Here we're going to be looking at one that references itself in the title, Lovesong, by the group The Cure. I'm going to be looking at the 2010 remaster here. I am aware of this song, but I have only ever heard covers of it. So it'll be interesting to finally check out the original. Let's dive in, see what The Cure is bringing to the table today. Really far panned over there. Ultimately, I think it balances out well with the electric organ over here. I like the bass line too, constantly moving while still landing on key tones. This is still a really interesting timbre within this mix. Okay, violin. Well, some sort of string synth. Little melodic guitar line here too that's playing off of the string synth and the bass movement. Really cool layering. A melody line that is a variation of the vocal melody. This one is very familiar to the vocal, harmonizing against it though. Oh, the breathiness on that width. An abrupt ending on that. Yeah, very interesting. Compared to the covers I have heard, the vocal melody is generally similar. I recognized a lot of it. There's very little of it that surprised me. Even the third verse having the different beginning of the line was replicated in most of the choruses, but the breathiness on With wasn't. That was a neat little surprise there. Otherwise, the vocal stuff is pretty much what I was expecting. The rest of the track is quite interesting, though. The atmosphere, the general chord progression is generally replicated in the covers I've heard, but it's the layers of this track that stand out. There's a lot of There's a lot of music happening in this track, and I think more so than that, evolution. And that evolution is something that I can't say I've heard in too many covers. In fact, I would say most of the covers I've heard are stripped down from this and reduces the general growth of these tracks into something a bit more, something flatter in composition, with less instruments dancing around in this melodic area. And I guess maybe that's where I want to start first when we hit the chorus. I kind of wanted to start with contrast and the different vibes of the verse and the chorus, but I think I'm just going to wrap that up into my reading of this track emotionally, which will be the section before we hit the lyrics. So yeah, the chorus here is really interesting. We have the main melody on the vocals. This is sort of the baseline root idea that everything else is based off of. There is a melody over here that is kind of just the exact idea that the vocals are doing, but harmonious, not playing the same pitches, playing different pitches, but the same intervals and the same timing of the rhythmic changes. However, it doesn't choose to play every single note. In fact, it seems to come in a few notes after. Not in a canon or a round kind of way, but it just omits the first few notes and then picks up later on in the vocal melody. It also, if I remember correctly, doesn't play the final few notes of the vocal melody either, but it does land on every key note. It is there present for the main notes that construct the general emotional movement throughout the track, the ones that are the strongest within the chords being played. Now we have another line over here though, and it is kind of the opposite. It plays more than what the vocals sing, but also decides to lean into these key moments and plays notes to fit within the note stack. I don't know what to call it, because sometimes we do end up getting triads out of this, but there's other times where the note chosen is the same note that the vocals sing, in which case we just have a dyad. Not quite as emotionally strong as a triad is, and we're just looking at 2-note chords versus 3-note chords. But I think this is interesting too. The song is generally about two people, where at least one of them feels complete when they are around or thinking of the other. I think it would have been interesting to have movements of single notes versus dyads to create a fullness when the harmony comes together, which is kind of what this instrument does. This one fills it out even more. And I don't know how to interpret that, as much as maybe it's just a musical decision. It sounds great to sometimes have 1 note, 2 notes, or 3 notes on any of these key tones. But I also love how this instrument over here adds to it. They play more than what the vocals do, and the vocals might hang onto a note for a quarter note or 1.5 beats or something. This one over here has a bit of a moving line. Instead of progressing with and slowing down with the vocals, they're kind of doing their own thing, adding and embellishing to that core melody. So we have a reductive approach to the melody over here, and we have an additive approach to the melody over here, and these two aren't necessarily in sync. I mentioned that this instrument over here cuts off or omits the first couple of notes. That doesn't necessarily mean that this one over here fills that space in. It's doing its own thing entirely in these extra runs. So I think it's really interesting how all three of these instruments connect, and that's only at the top end. The bass is playing melodic bass lines too. We can hear this most clearly in the verse, when there really isn't much contesting with the bass for movement aside from the vocals. But even within the chorus, the mix is incredibly clear to be able to hear what the bass is doing. It is primarily chord shaping. There's lots of arpeggiation in here, and usually on beat 1 of a bar, it is moving with the chord progression. It is playing the root note there. The melodic elements are mostly helping to transition into the next root tone, but it does create something of movement, and it has its own pace as well. It isn't just quarter notes like a walking bass line in jazz. There's rhythmic diversity to the bass line as well. So it's just very cool listening to technically, I guess, 3 melodies and a melodic foundation, if you will, all kind of coming together with this multi-layered melody approach and the way that they all bounce off of each other and work within each other. And it's just gorgeous, dude. I love it. Very unexpected. I haven't listened to a lot of The Cure, and maybe I'm just misremembering the, I think, only song that y'all have introduced me to for The Cure on the channel. But I don't remember this sort of melodic layering being something that I associate with them. And this might change my mind a little bit. Kind of interested to see what else they have done, particularly within this realm of poppy, catchy, but digestible density, if we can call it that. It works really well. Aside from that, there's not much else to bring up here. Talking about the drums, aside from the interesting mix on this, which the drums primarily take up this half of the sound. We have a lot of stuff in the center, and then we have some stuff really hard panned off to the right. And that's kind of it. There might be some stuff hard panned off to the left that we hear in fills, but for the general pattern, it's just center and right. And it's a very straightforward metronomic style beat. A lot of it's just keeping time, just very consistent. And then we have the bass, which I already talked about in the last section, but does sort of dominate the verse. The verse is drums, bass, and vocals, occasionally something ornamental. There is a one-note shimmer. I guess it's more of a slow strum. And you get a few notes that create a gorgeous chord played da 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 da, just kind of like moves into the chord. Bit on the slower side happens right at the halfway point of the verse on the downbeat of whatever bar that ends up being. And it's just, to me, more so a signifier for we're at the halfway point. We need to create some contrast in this. You've listened to the same thing for this 8-bar phrase probably. Let's put something here to change things up a little, to kind of put a marker that we're here, but we're not bored. That's really all that does. There's a couple of additional sounds in here. I remember the first verse having some like electric organ thing going on. Again, more ornamental stuff. It adds density to the track, but doesn't really alter much of emotional resonance or complexity. Just adds something more to listen to, some contrast. And so what we end up with is a verse that feels a bit more empty, with pieces that are trying to build a picture but never quite commit. A little idea here, little 3-beat idea there. Maybe we'll have some chords coming in over here, but it's more foundational than adding to anything. And it's a bunch of these ideas that if they were all playing consistently would create something as dense and rich as the chorus, but just doesn't. There's separation, there's temporal distance between them. Then the chorus kicks in and everything comes together beautifully. All of them their own thing. Again, all the melody lines are similar but different, but they're all working together in tandem to create this larger idea. And going back to the verse feels empty. We lose so much coming to that second verse. There is a solo in here. It is not flashy at all. Very much just kind of gets the idea across of a melody. In fact, it is, I would say, based around the same key tones as the vocal melody. It kind of does, it goes in its own direction. I wouldn't say that rhythmically it is based off of it, but it does focus on the same primary landmarks within the melody itself. It is derived from, but not copied from, the vocal melody. It ends up feeling very familiar in here. Something we've kind of heard before, but in a new light from a new instrument. Again, doesn't modulate the track or the emotionality or anything in any way. It just kind of is here. Something we've seen before, but in a new light. This one also feels a bit light. Empty. Not quite as much as the verse, but as we come out of this into the final verse, there's really not that much of a dip, and moving into the final chorus, it feels like we've been building to this for a while, and we've been waiting to get back to this fully realized part of the track. So this is a song of ups and downs. Emotionally, I find this to be really interesting because the main chord progression is kind of dreary, honestly. For a love song, it's not sappy. It feels kind of emotionally heavy. But I think that's sort of the point of it. By the time we hit the chorus and the vocal melody is at its most realized, all of the melodies are coming together to support it. It is warm and inviting. There's a lot of positivity to it. There's a joy that contrasts the dreary atmosphere of this track. And it is a song about being away from someone and not being, kind of wanting to return to them. Thinking about them makes you feel less lonely, and you're looking forward to being able to see them again. And it's this feeling of separation, but warm positivity for the future, or finding a warmth within when you think of them despite being alone. And, loneliness is often figuratively described as a coldness. So the warmth of the melody, I think, helps to reduce some of the coldness of the chordal feelings, of the atmosphere. It comes together really well. And this is something that, again, I don't think I can find too much of in covers. They don't seem to capture this, center of positivity, center of joy within a colder atmosphere that this song absolutely does. And I don't want to go on too much of, I was going to go on like a personal tangent, but I don't think that's worthwhile. Let's dive into some lyrics on this. I mean, I already know what the lyrics are. I've sung them a million times, but just in case the cover is differentiated in any way, let's check out these original lyrics and see what's going on here. Yep, fairly straightforward lyrics here. The verses simply state that when the narrator is with the person that they love, that they feel complete, they feel relaxed, they feel all of it. I mean, specifically, we have lines like, I'm home again, I feel like I am whole again, I am young and fun again, I am free and clean again. Just being around you makes me feel like a better person. The chorus states, however far away, however long I stay there, and whatever words I say, I will always love you. Nothing's going to change that. No matter the distance, no matter what I might say in frustration, possibly, it's what I kind of get from that third line in the chorus. No matter what, our narrator will always have love for this other person. Not quite everything I remember about it. I remember the distance being a bigger thing than just in the chorus, but I suppose the verses are the explanation of why they are so in love with this other person. It brings out the best in them. So yeah, I think all of this fits really well with the music, and I don't know if I'll return to this over the covers that I feel like I'm more familiar with, but I do find this to be more complete, I think might be a way to describe it. A fully realized idea here that I wish other covers would cover more extensively. Though that's probably on me for listening to alternative rock and punkier covers, which tend to be more stripped down music in general. That wraps it up for today then. These are my thoughts on The Cure's Lovesong. What did you think of this track? Are you one of the few people out there who might not have ever heard this in their life? It's an older track, right? 1989. I don't know. To me, it's just popular. It's been in films. It's been covered by hundreds of bands. But there's always a chance you haven't run into it. There's plenty of music you all seem to be appalled about that I've never heard of, so it happens. But yeah, let me know if you've never heard this and you know what your thoughts on this are, if you enjoyed it, if you have anything you'd like to correct me on, the usual stuff. Throw that and anything else you'd like to into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find ways to support the channel, link to my music, link to the Discord server. There's a ton of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. That way, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 p.m. No, that doesn't sound right. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. Where did I get 11 from? We'll continue on with this week's journey of exploring self-referential music. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.